Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, given time scale and place in the world that you are. Welcome to the webinar devoted to the quantum technology in national security. APS, in partnership with the Johns Hopkins Science Diplomacy Hub, welcomes you to an innovative international event dedicated to advance global collaboration and understanding in quantum science and technology. This is one of the several worldwide initiatives to celebrate 2025 as the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology. Our experience helps connect scientific community, industry leaders, policymakers, national labs, and the public, fostering the discussion on the transformative impact of quantum technologies. All previous webinars from this series can be found on APS YouTube channel. Today, we have our fourth Quantum Connect webinar in the series with Alex Radnaev, Jamil Abo-Shaeer, Kate Smith, Tom Wong, Michal Krelina, and Jonah Force-Hill. My name is Stojan Rebic. I'm an editor in quantum science for Physical Review Letters. So to start this webinar, I would like our participants to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of what do you do in quantum industry. I'm going to call you in the order that I see you on my screen. So let's start with Tom Wong.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Tom Wong, and I'm a physics professor at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. I do research in quantum algorithms, been working on quantum algorithms for about 15 years. And so my research, even though I'm a physics professor, is kind of at the intersection of physics and computer science. I also previously served at the National Quantum Coordination Office at the White House for 3 years under the Biden-Harris administration.
Thank you. Michal Krelina.
Hello. So my name is Michal Krelina. Greetings from Europe, specifically from Prague, Czech Republic. At the moment, I partly work as an associate senior researcher at SIPRI, which is Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, where I continue in my, let's say, academic research on the topic of quantum technologies and originally military applications. Now I focus more on let's say, impacts of quantum technologies for international security. Also, in parallel, I'm a co-founder of a company called QDev in Netherlands, where we focus on the security of quantum technology. So it's securely implemented and all is correct. So thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Alex.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Alex Radnaev. I am Director of Research and Development of Quantum Computing at Infleqtion. And in the past, before switching to quantum computing, I was in atomic clocks business and nuclear clocks research during grad school, as well as quantum networking. And right now, I am leading teams here to develop next generation quantum computers on neutral atoms.
Thank you. Jonah.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today. My name is Jonah Force-Hill. I am the head of U.S. business development and government affairs for Xanadu. It's a quantum computing company based in Toronto, Canada. We have been around since 2016, working to build photonic quantum computers at scale. Prior to joining Xanadu, I spent about 15 years in the U.S. government in various national security roles. First at the State Department, at the Commerce Department. After that, I moved to the U.S. Secret Service, and then finally actually was working with Tom at the White House, where I was in the National Security Council working on cybersecurity issues, principally post-quantum cryptography. So excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Jamil.
Hi, I'm Jamil Abo-Shaeer. I'm CEO and co-founder of Vector Atomic. Our company is a little over 7 years old. We're located in Pleasanton, California. Our focus is on building quantum technology for navigation and timing. Previous to Vector Atomic, I was at DARPA as a program manager, and I was a graduate student at MIT working on Bose-Einstein condensation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And last but not least, Kate.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Kate Smith. I'm an assistant professor of computer science at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. I work on a lot of various problems that focus on building out the software stack for quantum computing systems. So specifically, I really enjoy problems in optimized compilation, improving error management techniques, kind of going, bridging the gap between, low overhead error suppression to high overhead error correction techniques, how we can pick the best solution that depends on not only your qubit technology, but also your application at hand. At the end of the day, I am a computer architect, and what is a computer architecture or architecture in itself without context? So I really love bringing in context into the compilation process. And it's a pleasure to be here. Before I was at Northwestern, I was actually at Infleqtion as well. I worked in the quantum software group, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's a really great community, all the folks that are in quantum software and quantum computing ecosystem.
Thank you. So let's start this discussion with a question that is essentially for all of you, and that is, what was your first quantum moment? So what was the experience that first sparked your interest in quantum technology and set you on your current career path? So with that question, let's continue with Kate.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure to answer that question. I think my quantum moment was getting to run an experiment on a quantum computer for the first time. So around 2016 timeframe, I was a grad student learning about quantum information, and I thought it was just fascinating, especially with my background in electrical engineering and computer engineering. Being introduced to quantum computing, that really did, inspire me a lot. And I just had to get down to the details of like, how does this actually work? How does this physically implemented? So it was around that time when the IBM processors went live on the quantum cloud, and you would learn something in class and then you would try to apply it on the quantum computers, and you'd realize that there were all these constraints to programming those pieces of hardware. So that was one of the things that my problem-solving mentality and wanting to approach the task of programming one of these systems, how can we solve this in thinking computationally? So started developing little scripts to help transpile the circuits. Now there's all these tools that exist for transpilation and compilation at the low level, but early on there really weren't a whole lot of things that existed in that space. So I really enjoyed coming up with tooling, and that ended up turning into what I focused my dissertation on. But yeah, I think that was the quantum moment of realizing that this theory was real, that information has to be real for it to be a meaningful computation.
Yep, thank you. Now, given your varied background in the national security, Jonah, I'm really interested to hear from you. How did you end up in quantum technologies?
Yeah, so as you might imagine, through a cybersecurity lens. So I had been working on cyber policy issues for about a decade before really coming into contact with quantum in a meaningful way. And really it was the work that I did on post-quantum cryptography at the National Security Council, working on National Security Memorandum number 10, if folks are familiar with that. I was working on tackling cybercrime issues and vulnerabilities in next generation telecom equipment, and really wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to quantum as a field. And really was sort of under the belief that we were decades away from seeing meaningful products and commercialization of this stuff. And what I learned through my work on that memorandum was, no, in fact, we are moving very, very quickly, and these technologies are going to be with us far sooner than I think maybe the general public understands. And I just thought it was really one of the coolest technology areas in the world, and wanted to be involved in that, and really never looked back, and have been focusing on helping build this technology and then ensuring that it's in the hands of national security leaders. So I just once I realized the trajectory, I couldn't help but get involved.
Okay, so let's now hear from the people who are currently in industry. Alex, what can you tell us?
My first quantum moment, that was back in undergraduate times. I think building the first scientific grade laser, ECDL, and shooting it to atoms and then seeing Doppler profiles and understand, wow, you can actually have so much control of atoms, and then getting to see NISTF-1 atomic counting, atomic clock operation, and working on it and see that you can get 15 digits of precision, how much control we can have on atoms using lasers. And that's blew my mind and really stuck with me. So I think it was a pivotal moment since then.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. Jamil?
Sure. I was an undergraduate at Berkeley. I was taking quantum mechanics. I really enjoyed the class. It was very mathematical. But there was a student seminar. It was given by my future advisor, Wolfgang Ketterle. I went there because they were offering free sandwiches. And but I went and I listened to his talk, and he was talking about Bose-Einstein condensation. It was in the very early stages. He was showing quantum mechanics in real life pictures of atoms interfering, very non-intuitive things. And I really enjoyed that. And that really sparked my interest to go into that field.
Thank you. And finally, the people from academia, Tom.
Yeah, so I didn't learn about quantum technologies and quantum computing until I started graduate school. But I think what got me there was just my interest in physics, which really came out of my high school physics teacher. And I think that's true for a lot of people, that they find their careers through amazing teachers. And so definitely taking high school physics, having a great teacher really made a big impact. In college, my quantum mechanics class, which was more quantum mechanics, like for physics, not quantum technologies, kind of kept that interest alive. And so when I went to graduate school and then I started looking for a research advisor and a research topic, at that point I'd heard of quantum computing, didn't know what it was, but I had also majored in computer science as an undergrad. So I was like, well, I like quantum mechanics, I like computer science, like maybe I should explore this quantum computing thing. And so I Googled professors at UC San Diego where I was, see if anyone did research in quantum computing. I found David Meyer in the math department. So I reached out asking if I could, do a project with him for a summer to see if I liked it. I did, and we got along great, and he had funding. So I ended up doing my thesis with him in quantum computing, and the rest is history.
Excellent, thanks. Michal.
Well, actually, my original background is in high energy nuclear physics. So actually, quantum is part of my life, like from 2007. But actually, the one big moment was in 2016, my last year of PhD, when beyond my, let's say, high energy physics business, I discovered the topic of quantum radar, which was very interesting for me because I always was very interested in military technology, especially electronic warfare, and that was something that combined together. So I really went very deep inside the topic. I understood actually it's not so much relevant for a military application, real. However, it was like the beginning. Okay, so what more quantum and military application could be there? So from that moment, I start my, let's say, second track, or now the primary track about the quantum and military and security applications.
Great, thank you. So this is very interesting to hear the varied backgrounds of different people. Now, our next question is, why does national security need quantum technologies? And I believe this is almost perfectly tailored for Jonah to answer.
I would say national security needs the best and most capable technologies, no matter what its source, right? So I don't think quantum is unique in that respect, right? National security needs great AI. National security needs great propulsion and new materials and all of these things, right? For our national security, we really need a diverse and strong industrial base, right? So I don't think in quantum is particularly unique in that space. But what I will say is, given the impact of quantum technologies on so many adjacent fields, it's really essential, perhaps more than some others, to have our defense establishment having access to the latest and greatest technologies and having the training and the infrastructure that's needed to really capitalize on those new technologies. So I don't think quantum is so much of an outlier here, but it is something that historically the national security community is slow to adopt new technologies. So I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but this group here, I'm sure, would advocate for all kinds of new mechanisms and new procurement tools and all of that to make sure that not only that the defense community has the ability to leverage these tools, but also that the quantum community has the ability to leverage the money and the expertise of the defense community as well.
Thank you. So, would anyone else like to add anything? I'm particularly interested in people that are researching in quantum sensing and quantum communications.
Sure, I'm happy to answer. The world runs off of GPS. All our transportation, telecom, financial sectors are all fundamentally dependent on it, as is our defense. GPS is enabled. It's fundamentally a precision timing system. It's enabled by atomic clocks. So the technology is already out there. It's already playing a central role in how the world operates, whether people know it or not. That would be my quick answer.
Yeah, I would say that if you want the level of precision required for technology such as GPS, that you actually have to use quantum mechanics. I think one of the things that the National Institutes of Standards and Technology that our colleagues there might say is that if you want to do precision measurements, you have to do quantum measurements, and it's basically because quantum things are the most sensitive things that we have, and so you, in some sense, in order to create the technologies that are good enough for national security applications, you have to turn to quantum.
Yeah, and maybe just following up on what Tom is saying. So if you want to know where you are to 3 meters, you need to know your time to 10 nanoseconds. You need to know that for all time, and that only atomic clocks can do that. If you relied on the next best technology, you would know your position to kilometers and not meters. So fundamentally, you have to make these quantum measurements, rely on these quantum systems that have very good stability. Kind of their properties don't drift or fluctuate in time, so they make these excellent measurements.
I would add to
yes.
Jonah's statement that we need better technologies. Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead, Michal.
Sorry, I just 3 comments. I mean, shortly, show me intelligence agency which will not want ability to decrypt any encryptions, right? So that's a very simple reason. But from the perspective of international security, it's all the time kind of balance. So even, let's say, if you kind of not extra believe in many, let's say, possible advantages of quantum technologies, which always let's say, in deployment can be questionable still. But if you see that your opponent is doing something around, you are at least forced a little bit investigate what's going around. And another aspect that is not always discussed, at the end, if there will be some interesting advantage, quantum technologies will start to be more massive, cheaper, and then available non-state actors. And non-state actors can again act against, let's say, your national security. So it's another level than just purely, nation against nations. That should be considered as well in long-term run. Of course, not. I would not say at the moment, but it should go in long term.
I would add what Jonah was saying, that we need for national security all best technologies and the latest developments, and quantum have such a big breadth as well. In addition to timing, there's also position with atom interferometry. There is quantum RF sensing. There is quantum computing. So if we go to the quantum level and prioritize the research have been done. There is so many different type of technologies that are available. I think that's another unique point of the quantum.
Yep. Excellent, thanks.
Yeah, I think it might be worth emphasizing that, obviously there will be national security implications of future quantum technologies, such as quantum computers being developed, but quantum technologies already impact current national security, such as with GPS that was already mentioned, but also all of like semiconductor chips, like that's all made possible by quantum. Night vision is made possible by quantum, whether it's like image intensification night vision that's based on the photoelectric effect, or thermal imaging that's based on black body radiation. Like these are quantum technologies that already exist that are crucial for national security.
Thank you. Thank you. This was a very thorough answer. Thank you very much. My next question is, how has the landscape of quantum technology in national security evolved since you began your career? And what kind of developments have surprised you the most in these developments?
I can share my observations. There are some cycles. There is hype and bust cycles happened in quantum computing at least two or three times. That's on the quantum computing side. And also the most surprise, I think, to me on the quantum computing, that the amount of progress fueled by combination of funding from both government and private sector investors is really good, and the amount of progress is really fantastic. That is, every day there is a paper coming out, and every year so many milestones are achieved.
Kate, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say from the time that I first got into it, maybe this is a little bit more, just from my perspective, like whenever I first got into quantum computing, which was a little late in the game in terms of, when oftentimes students are exposed to it in their undergrad, even now early on as early as high school. I was in my grad school days, and I was first, starting a PhD in electrical engineering, and kind of started to take some more of these quantum classes, and thinking about where I wanted my career trajectory to go. A lot of my friends were a little like, they were kind of surprised. They're like, oh, you didn't want to go in a more traditional route with an electrical engineering degree, on like microelectronics or things like that. And I was like, no, I think that this, quantum computing thing is pretty cool. These quantum systems are pretty sophisticated, and there's going to be a lot of challenges that are going to be, that are going to need to be solved, especially when we think about putting them together in some sort of hybrid HPC environment. So that early kind of transition point of going into quantum computing and focusing on quantum computing to now, quantum computing is everywhere. Like, I think it's starting to become a bit more mainstream, something that's coming up in the news, especially with all of the big developments in the last couple of years, with a lot of big companies kind of getting involved with quantum research and being a little bit more public with their developments and the milestones that have been reached across various different qubit platforms. Like, I think that has been one of the biggest developments. And now I think more and more the general population is starting to think about what are the implications going to be on their day-to-day life. So I think that would be the biggest shift that I've seen.
Thank you. Yes, this is very interesting what you said, because from the editorial point of view, I can say that we are seeing more and more papers in what you can call quantum engineering coming in our journals, and we welcome them very much, which are the papers that actually do not necessarily have any new or breakthrough physics in them, but it has a breakthrough in a development of a particular device. We very much welcome those papers, because this is the way the discipline now develops. It's a very important aspect of it. Yeah. Does anyone else has anything to add?
Oh, maybe another quick comment. I've seen also a good job of getting technology out from the lab into the field. So we've seen frequency comms came in, Nobel Prize, and now there are multiple products in the market. And quantum RF sensing is getting tested in the field. So I think that's another good evolution to see.
So with that, let's go to the next questions. What real world national security challenges could quantum technology solve? We touched upon some of them, but here is the opportunity to elaborate on more. Tom, start, or Alex?
I can start with the most ready technologies, the atomic clocks that help both make our timing infrastructure reliable, as people already said, but also there's new applications coming in, for example, making our existing radar systems more precise and detect drones. So the warfare with drones have changed dramatically. There's new use cases, and atomic clocks come in from that angle to improving radars. Will be one very concrete examples. In the quantum RF sensing, there are opportunities to shrink the large antennas into much smaller factors and access different radio frequencies that were not previously accessed, and so on. I'll let others to add some other examples too.
Yes, so Michal, Alex has mentioned quantum radars, and you mentioned quantum radars as being one of your motives to get into quantum science and technologies. So can you add something on that regard? What other
I think it's a different wording. One thing is a quantum enhanced radar. What Alex meant, like you put a quantum or atomic clocks to classical radar, and you can let's say make better precisions, or you can place there quantum RF receiver, and again it has different advantages. But it's really quantum enhanced radar. Quantum radar by principle is something it's from the field of quantum imaging. That's very interesting. It works perfectly in laboratories, especially in an optical domain. It can be interesting, for example, in the space. But in the Earth, at the Earth, with the atmosphere, we need to use really RF domain, and it's really something that's not feasible with current technology for some, let's say, range 200 kilometers. We are happy if we have few centimeters in laboratory, and that's all. So that's something not real. If I should compliment Alex, for sure it's navigation. It's a big topic. Some gravity or magnetic field aided navigation, inertial navigation. Probably it seems we will have a little better sensors for detection submarines, but not so much as sometimes is hype in the news. For sure, this electronic warfare radar, I see very huge potential. More speculatively, there is a good chance there could be also for some underground mapping or some imaging in the, let's say, challenging environments. But a lot of things are still nice on paper in laboratory, but the real deployment is still questionable in many technologies yet.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else has anything to add?
I might have something to add. This might be a little bit more far out, but thinking about something that's very critical for national security is considering our critical infrastructure and making sure that it's safe, operational, secure, and resources are getting to the people. Now we have this kind of, we're seeing how populations are more dynamic than ever before. You know, we've built this critical infrastructure that you know is decades old, and we're seeing populations move just, you know, in the United States from one city, one metropolitan area to the next. So how can we make sure that the you know, this critical infrastructure can keep up and that we can continue to maintain it so that people are kept you know, and they're able to like, stay safe with their resources supplied to them. So I think that potentially quantum algorithms further down the road, whenever we have developed utility scale quantum systems, can help make sure that our critical infrastructure is maintained, and you know, we're load balancing enough to make sure that we are you know, keeping that element of national security like in mind.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, changing the scope a little bit. Here is the question for essentially any one of you can answer, but feel free to volunteer than to answer it. What kind of challenges did you face when transitioning for a traditional academic discipline, computer science or physics, into quantum computing and quantum technologies? And is there any advice that you can give to the younger students of how to do it in a painless way? And related to that, also the transition between academia and industry would be an interesting one to comment on. Does anyone wants to volunteer?
I can volunteer. I mean, it's a very different time now. It's a really good time to be a graduate student or a postdoc. I'm probably a little on the older side at this point. And when I was in academia, you know, the goal was really to become a professor. You're working in these esoteric, say for us, atomic physics fields, and that was kind of the only thing that was known. And if you can't be a professor, then you have to like fall back to one of these other jobs, maybe working for laser company, things like that. But it wasn't as interesting as the work that was being done in academia. It's a very different landscape now where you can, you know, or other people would go and they maybe work in finance or things like that, or things that not totally related to their PhD. Now you can go and use your PhD, you know, directly in industry to address things and, you know, work on very interesting problems in quantum computing, quantum sensing, all these related fields. So I think it's actually a very positive time given all the interest and investment, and I think that impedance match is very good now. That's maybe what I would say.
Thank you. Alex, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I would totally agree with Jamil there. And from my experience of transitioning to industry and back to academia and then back to industry, I've learned a few things. And if any advice I would give to anyone trying to get any job or even in quantum computing or anything else is networking. Pretty much all the jobs I've got were through networking, and your network is your net worth. Go grow your network, go talk to people. If you're interested in a specific company you're in, you can look people up on LinkedIn and ask them to have an informational chat over coffee or remotely. And this is a really great time to be with a physics degree, which appears to be more AI-proof than other degrees, and there is so many great jobs in industry.
Okay. Tom?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Jamil said, which is that I think that times have changed and there's just so many more resources and opportunities now for people who want to enter into quantum science. Like, remember when I was first learning, in terms of like the resources, there was like Nielsen and Chuang, which is a very popular textbook. There's like John Prescoll's lecture notes, which are great, but like if those don't fit you or your like academic background, there weren't a lot of other options. But now there are so many different textbooks, whether you come from physics or computer science, or so many like, you know, subsets of all those, or in other fields of engineering. There are so many online resources as well. And so I guess what I would say to students is that, you know, even if there's, say, no one at your institution that does quantum computing, like no faculty members or no courses, formal courses in quantum technologies, like it's okay. There are so many resources that you can find online. And if something doesn't work for you, we'll try other resources. So yeah, I think it's going to be a lot easier now, I think, for people to start learning about quantum technologies, and that is a very good thing.
Thank you. Does anybody else has anything to add? If not, let's go to the next question. So our next question is, what are the applications of quantum computing for national security beyond breaking encryption? I believe we addressed some of them, but if there is anything for you to add, this is the time and space to do that.
I would like to add one really interesting use case I realized recently. It's material science, which quantum computing is promising to really accelerate and help us to discover new materials we haven't even thought of and expedite the discovery of the discovery flows we have now. And like Jonah was saying, we need materials for defense. For example, in New York Times, there was a paper about how samarium is a critical high temperature magnet that we use in missiles and jet fighters, but it's only mined in China. So imagine if quantum computers will allow us to discover new materials that are high temperature magnets that we don't rely on the one source that we have now.
Thanks. Anyone else has anything to add?
I think it's worth noting in the context of all these potential applications that people have mentioned that perhaps what the biggest impacts will be would be the applications that we haven't thought of yet. And because that's something that we see over and over again when it comes to new technologies. Like when the founders of quantum mechanics 100 years ago were creating the laws of quantum physics, they weren't envisioning all of the computer technology applications, atomic clocks, GPS, MRI imaging, all these things that we have today. And similarly, it's probably quite unlikely that we're going to be able to identify what the biggest applications are. Like there's this quote that I really like, which is something along the lines that we tend to overestimate the potential impacts in the short term, but underestimate them in the long term. And I think this is something that is actually highlighted in some of our federal strategies for quantum information science. So just thinking of one, like there's a quantum strategy for quantum sensing called Bringing Quantum Sensors to Fruition that's available on quantum.gov. And one of the things that they note is that the inventors of, for example, GPS weren't envisioning all the applications we have now with like Uber and DoorDash and things like that. And so similarly, they state very plainly that the applications of quantum sensing for the future are probably going to be much, much bigger than the things that we currently have identified.
And maybe I can be a little specific and give you one specific risk. For example, one idea of quantum computing are chemical simulations, specifically, for example, protein folding. It's let's say, big hope for pharma. However, with the same, let's say, computational power, actually you can do good as well as bad protein, right? So that could have also significant consequence and risk in the future. So it also should be considered. It's one very specific example.
Thank you. Oh, this is very interesting. We have already mentioned GPS many times and the contribution that atomic clocks bring to the positioning capabilities of GPS and the related technologies. Now, given GPS vulnerability risks, how can the new quantum technology help? I guess there are kind of encryptions that you can envisage that can decrease the GPS vulnerability. So, Jonah, can you say something about that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, given the GPS vulnerability risks, how can the new quantum technology help?
Yeah, well, I think that's sort of the principal goal of developing these PNT systems from quantum sources, right? We know that GPS is vulnerable. We know already that there are ways to jam and spoof and otherwise manipulate GPS systems. So the fundamental goal of developing these new quantum based PNT systems is to provide a more robust alternative, right? And when GPS fails, you've got a ready to deploy backup. Or alternatively, if the systems get good enough, you may be able to replace GPS altogether in certain systems. So that's really sort of why this field is moving as quickly as it is that we know that GPS is not fail-proof, and for critical national security applications and commercial applications, but really the subject of this conversation is defense. You really need multiple layers of reliability and redundancy.
Anybody else has an opinion?
I'll just add, I totally agree with Jonah saying, and it's nice to see those devices for measuring your acceleration, rotation, based on atom interferometry. it's no longer in the lab. It's already getting trials in airplanes and in the sea, and really nice to see them being deployed in the field. And where you covered the atomic clocks.
Thank you. Now, for all kinds of quantum architectures, there are many architectures available right now out there. There are trapped ions, there are atomic arrays called atoms, there are superconducting qubits, NV centers, quantum dots, and so on and so on, photonic technologies. Question is, how can those different quantum technologies interplay with each other in order to make a final gadget? So I'm primarily looking at the people from industry here.
I can
yes
take
please.
this one. So the interplay, I think, happens in two buckets. One you described as different modalities start to connect to each other. The most trivial ones are when you're connecting quantum computers together and building quantum repeaters for quantum key distribution. That's a nice example of that. People are trying to connect different type of qubits together where you leverage the strengths of one and strengths of the others, so that combined system is better. And also we see in the other bucket, if we have better atomic clocks and timing, that can also help quantum RF sensing. And this hybrid platform now is benefiting from both technologies. So we see these two type of synergies emerging.
Thank you.
Maybe something similar, I would say, is we use a lot of the same tools and techniques, say, in quantum sensing and timekeeping and quantum computing. So if we, make progress in one of these areas, we've made progress in all of them. If the quantum sensing side is trying to get the technology out into the field, and so we have to build the technology to survive rocket launches or go on ships or go in planes. A lot of that kind of robust engineering will translate back into quantum computing. It's not necessary, for a quantum computer doesn't need to go on a rocket necessarily, but it's a much more complicated system that you're developing, and it needs ultimately that same level of robustness, not because the temperature is going to swing wildly in the laboratory, but because the guts of that system are so much larger, it's much more complicated. And so in order to get those systems to work, you're going to have to adopt those same tools and techniques.
Great, thank you. So with that, I would like to throw one little expansion on that question. Do you see the place in the future for classical quantum hybrids in quantum technologies, or do you regard them as a stepping stone towards full quantum technologies? Tom, would you like to
Sure.
address?
So I envision it similar to how with our current classical computers, you have your CPUs and you have your GPUs, like in graphics cards. There's a lot of things that we do where just using your ordinary CPU is just fine, sending some emails, word processing, things like that. But if you're going to do some, gaming or some like 3D modeling and things like that, where you really could benefit from the specialized hardware of a GPU, then you have a separate GPU, you send it off to that, and you get the answers back to your CPU. And so, there are certain problems that quantum computers can solve more quickly than classical computers, but it can't necessarily do everything faster. For certain things, like your normal computer is fine. And so, I envision it that it'd be similar, where if you have certain problems that are better on a quantum computer, you send it off to your quantum computer, then you get the results back on your classical computer. So I think that there's always going to be a need for classical computing.
Thank you. Anybody else want to tackle that?
I'll just quickly second that, Tom. For example, for quantum computing material science, that's already a common use case. That's why people bring the quantum computers straight into the data centers next to supercomputers to have tight loop.
I would also like to mention that just for the supporting computations that must be done for error management. So decoding, there's been a lot of really exciting work that has shown how deep learning has been applied to get real-time decoding on superconductor-based systems. Superconductors are very fast. You need really fast decoding if you want to do it in real time. And we're still working with toy-sized systems, so scaling that up, we're probably going to need some pretty powerful compute on that side. And that's all just going to be classical.
Thank you. Great. Now, a question that cannot be avoided in this field, which is hype versus reality. As we know, there is a lot of hype related to all things quantum these days. So the question for all of you is, how do you navigate the hype versus reality in quantum computing when communicating with a wide variety of people, your stakeholders, your investors, or the general public?
I think that this is an area where the social sciences have a lot to say, and the humanities. And I think sometimes in the sciences, we tend to ignore those voices that I think are very important, because science and technology is a human endeavor, right? They're technologies that humans are creating, and we're going to experience whatever blessings or consequences that there are from these technologies. And so, and I think this is true not just with quantum, but with any technology. And, I think that there are basic questions alongside that hype and whether or not people are being honest about technological applications, such as, famous philosophical question is, do the ends justify the means? Is developing your quantum system justified by lying about its potential uses, or, things like that. And, I guess, when you asked this question, one of the things that came to mind was this really upsetting example of hype. Like, I remember in the early days of COVID, when it was like really bad and people were like being hospitalized and dying left and right and things like that, there was a quantum computing startup that announced that they would allow any COVID researcher to use their quantum hardware for free for the investigation of ways to fight COVID. And as you know, like with those quantum technologies at the time, like they were definitely not in a place where they could do anything useful towards addressing COVID or just doing anything useful, period. And I remember being very frustrated that they were basically taking the attention of COVID researchers away from potentially like real ways to address COVID and trying to like almost distract them with quantum. And I would say that is an example where we definitely fell short. But yeah, I think that there are some really deep questions about ethics that arise in this hype conversation, and I think that it would be wise for scientists to look to people who are experts on matters of ethics, such as those from the social sciences.
Thank you. This is very interesting, and it of course relates with the issue of over-promising things that we cannot be sure we are going to be able to deliver in the future. So that's where the hype is possibly the most dangerous, because if eventually we are not able to do that, then we will suffer a blowback for not delivering our promises. Does anybody else has?
Yes, maybe I would like to add that it's kind of natural, like right? Not just in quantum, but for example in AI, you have startups, they have investors, they need to keep some valuation, so they need to have some marketing, they need to give some promises very often, or at least a little overstated. So that's kind of a natural source of hyping, or sometimes even overhyping. So in that case, it's important to have some source of kind of a neutral source of information. For example, at SIPRI, we publish, let's say, 2 papers longer focus on policymakers, where we really try to keep neutral tones. More people, especially from different field of social sciences, as was mentioned, contribute as well. And for example, my internal goal is also not only speak about quantum computing, how will break encryption, that you have billions of reports, but I really try to focus also on all other aspects of quantum technologies in general, and keep really neutral language, ideally supported with some research if available. That's not always so easy. So it's good to have some this type of naturally neutral sources than just from business side.
Yep. Anyone else on the hype versus reality?
I think that the hype issue is partly our failure to communicate the benefits of basic science and the potential for new technologies. And I guess what I mean by that is, like, we have a long history now of how classical computers have revolutionized essentially every field. And even though we didn't expect, even though we at the time of the development of classical computers, people didn't envision all these potential applications. And I think that if people can understand that and see that with quantum computers, you have this new computational capability, and the fact that, there are some potential applications that we envision that will be very impactful, but that we expect there to be way more applications than that. And given just how much classical computers have revolutionized society, we expect that quantum computers will do that as well. Like, I think that there are ways to explain why quantum technologies are so important without having to make up reasons.
Hey, thank you. Yeah. I think there is another issue with all of that. It is simply the way science works that is not necessarily ideal for communicating it to the general public. I mean, often in science, we embark on a certain line of research and promise a certain result only to find out that it is not feasible. But however, along the way of finding it is not feasible, we stumble upon something else. So then there is a challenge of telling to people, remember what we promised the first time, we'll forget about it. Here is this cool thing that we have discovered along the way. So this is the kind of thing that is very sensitive in the way we communicate it to the outer world from the world of science. And we have to be careful about it. Yeah.
Maybe just one more comment. Sometimes it's also political. I mean, sometimes this overhyping is on purpose.
Yeah.
And actually, if you ask a scientist from quantum, they immediately know it's nonsense. However, this news, they have a huge reach, bigger than scientists, and that's kind of this very often part of some information campaign, and that's another aspect that we as scientists often we cannot do much.
Yes, that's true as well. Yes. So let me ask you the next question. What skills do you consider most valuable for the next generation of quantum professionals beyond just technical expertise in quantum physics or algorithms?
Who would like to take that one?
Sure.
I would say your skills to effectively work with people and computers. So for working with people, emotional intelligence, and all the skills for communicating with people and finding consensus, that's critical. And for working with computers is software engineering, and Python is the most used language at the moment. So I think I would say beyond the quantum mechanics and the atomic physics and whatever is the expertise, those other two are something we're looking for when we're hiring.
How about the skills of communicating outside of the realm of quantum physicists? Because especially those of you who are in industry or who were in industry, communicating with investors, communicating with the general public and asking for funding is also a very important thing. So would you consider this aspect of efficient communication, as you mentioned, Alex, emotional intelligence in that context? Would you consider that to be a valuable skill to develop, perhaps during the graduate studies?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I have to talk to a really diverse audience with really different both technical expertise and different familiarity with technologies from both internal and externally. So that's a good one. Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. So let me ask you one more question before we go to the audience questions. What is one misconception about the careers in quantum technology that you'd like to clarify for audience members considering entering this field? So let me start with Kate.
I would say that one doesn't necessarily, there are many jobs that do require a PhD in quantum mechanics or physics or something that's fairly tightly interconnected to either a specific quantum system or, you know, the theory. But as the quantum industry is beginning to grow, and of course, this is what I'm learning from my friends in industry, that there are a variety of different jobs with different levels of expertise that are required. So maybe not quantum expert, but quantum aware, and maybe you are a expert software engineer, and you may not necessarily need to know the dynamics of a specific quantum system, but you are able to leverage your expertise in classical computation and HPC towards quantum computing systems. So I think that's what I would say, is that there is a range of expertise that is required, and that range in that pipeline is just going to increase as we, you know, continue to develop these systems further and make more progress in the quantum computing and quantum sensing space.
Okay, does anyone else wants to answer this question?
Sure, maybe I would echo what Kate says and say it a little bit differently. You know, quantum technologies are built from classical technologies, and so you don't need necessarily PhD physicists. You don't always want PhD quantum physicists doing all the work. You need all the additional people. It takes a big team that can be people who know vacuum hardware, lasers and optics, mixed signal electronics, FPGA software, all this thing. I think one of the things that's exciting is that all those people are needed to fundamentally contribute to this. We're trying to do very challenging things, and we can't do it without them. So maybe also getting back to the last question, you know, these are big goals that require big teams with diverse skills, and being able to convey that, you know, the information on what needs to be done, not just to the physicists, but to the engineers as well, to the teams you're working with, is super important.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off of those comments, I think that just to broaden it a little bit, yeah, like we do need people who are quantum physicists, who are STEM experts in other areas to have some quantum awareness to contribute to the building of quantum systems. But we also need people who are not STEM people at all. Like, to have a business, you need people in business and marketing and sales and HR, all these other, supporting roles, where, for them to have some level of quantum awareness would be very helpful. And so, I guess I would say for the audience that, if you want to do STEM, obviously there is a place in quantum for you. But if you don't want to do STEM, there's also a place in quantum for you.
Thank you. That's all very interesting answers. So I think now we are at the full hour of our seminar, and we would like to pass to the questions that the audience asks. So the first question, I would ask Jonah to tackle this question. It says, how does quantum tech help SSBN or even detect them? So SSBN, for those who are not familiar, relates to the submerged military technology such as nuclear submarines.
Yeah, I can't really speak to the specific technology there, but quantum sensors in their various forms really are adding meaningful capabilities in sensing, as we all know here. So I can't speak specific to SSBNs, but this is a critically important area of interest for navies around the world and for large defense organizations that really do want to be able to stay one step ahead of adversarial technologies. So I'll punt on the question of actual detection of those kind of machines, but maybe Jamil, looks like you're eager to
I'm happy to answer that because
Yeah,
we're developing technology for that. So in terms of helping SSBN, so what's the idea? We're talking about nuclear submarines. The U.S. has these nuclear submarines that are of incredibly high value. Obviously, $10 billion systems, and they are naturally denied GPS access because they're underwater, and they want to be underwater for 30 days, maybe 90 days. And so it's a challenge to navigate them. Also, in addition to them wanting, the U.S. or the ship wanting to know where it is, there's adversaries that want to know where it is too. So everyone's looking for them. So in operating these systems, you don't want to emanate, you don't want to put out sonar, things like that. And so you're flying blind in these systems. So they have incredibly precise navigation systems based on kind of classical technologies, $10 million systems that are using inertial navigation. The idea is very simple. You're measuring your 3 axes of rotation, your 3 axes of acceleration, you integrate up the equations of motion. And the better you can make those measurements, the better you know where you are. There's a lot of filtering involved, things like that. So these high-end devices, even with the navigation systems they have, can accumulate kilometers of error on very short time scales, on couple-day time scales, and so that is a challenge. And so quantum technologies can help this by doing some aiding to the system. They can, for simplest thing is you can build more precise rotation and acceleration sensors. You'll know where you are better. The next piece is you can use external signals, and this was mentioned earlier by Michal, which is magnetic signatures or gravity signatures. Those are kind of maps themselves, and if you can precisely measure those and feed that into your overall navigation solution, you can kind of bound the error on these systems. So not kind of unbounded tens of kilometers of error over, say, 3 months, but maybe you can push that down to sub-kilometer by precisely measuring gravitational fields or magnetic fields to go with it. In terms of detection, this isn't something necessarily that we work on, but there is a magnetic signature. That SSBN is made out of metal, and so very precise magnetic sensors can be used to potentially detect them.
Thank you. The next question is for Kate. Said you mentioned the enhanced error correction. What about the Easter-Neal no-go theorem, which contradicts this? It says we can't create a universal quantum error corrector for quantum computation. Then how will we enhance all quantum error correction like that?
That is an interesting question. I think that in terms of, so I will preface this with I'm not a theorist. I do not research novel error correction schemes. I kind of take the ones that already exist and develop optimizations to make them more scalable and more practical for existing systems. So I just want to kind of put that out there. I think that there's a lot of really interesting work that's done in the theory space for developing new techniques for quantum error correction. So the techniques that I focused mostly have been on the surface code. And in terms of the developments that we've seen in the last couple of years in terms of scaling are beyond thresholds. I think that there's a lot of promise in terms of making surface code a practical quantum error correction technique. But there's still a lot of challenges, and I'm not going to, being in favor of making sure that we do not overly hype quantum systems and their current capabilities. There's still a long way to go in terms of making a utility scale system that is based on the surface code, something that's practical and scalable. So that's something that that we are working towards in terms of reducing the impact of some of the bottlenecks that exist today that kind of hinder scaling. So I don't know if that was the best answer to that question, but maybe someone who has a more of an eye towards the theory would be better to answer that question than myself.
I can jump in on that. I think that Ethereum is only prohibiting you a certain narrow class of algorithms. Specifically, it says you cannot do quantum error correction with universal logical gate set transversally. But there are a bunch of solutions already published and being experimentally implemented, like magic state distillation, and there's some other approaches also appearing. So I think we're all good there. No showstopper.
Okay.
Thanks, Alex.
Well, that's an important message, right? The next question is, do you foresee Beidou impacting national security? Beidou is a Chinese satellite system based on quantum communication.
I don't think so. I think Beidou is a standard classic satellite-based navigation systems. So, I mean, if who asked this question, if they really meant Beidou, it's nothing extra because US has GPS, in Europe you have Galileo, Russia has GLONASS, so that's basically at the very similar technologies. If the question was more about the Chinese quantum communication satellites like misuse, which is the first generation. Nowadays, Chinese has already the second generation of satellites up, and soon they will launch third generation of quantum communication satellites. In this sense, yes, they are the leader in quantum communications. If it's an immediate threat, not at the moment, but what's not now can be soon.
Okay. Anyone else wants to add to that? Okay. A few weeks ago, the European Commission adopted a quantum strategy. Do we need a legal regulation for quantum technology?
I think that if Congress is going to pass something, they should pass the reauthorization of the National Quantum Initiative Act.
Okay.
Maybe what I can add from my perspective, if you read it, very often it's relatively general and saying for this specific field in quantum technologies, we will release a specific technological roadmap during 2026. It's about quantum computing. It's about sensing, military or dual use applications. So that's what the European Commission released. It's just, let's say, the beginning. It's now they are working on something we call quantum acts. So that's probably something similar as you are going to have a bill, but this is for the whole quantum, not only, let's say, cryptographic part.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Here's an interesting question. If one is from a social science background, advising or writing on these technologies from a military perspective, what would you advise them to understand from a national security perspective? Jonah, perhaps you may tackle this question.
Yeah, I was just reading it, trying to understand exactly what they were asking there. So if one is from a social science background, advising or writing on these technologies from a military perspective, what would you advise them to understand from a national security perspective? Maybe you can try to parse that if you can.
So from a military perspective, clearly there are some military applications that may or may not come to fruition. And then there are national security perspective with respect to the counter-espionage. So what would you expect them to, how do you expect them to communicate on that?
Are other people understanding the question here? I'm happy to weigh in. I'm still not quite getting. So,
Jonah, you're good. You got this.
Okay, well, I guess if the question is, how should folks who work in social science approach national security issues? Is that more or less? Let's see. Oh, I'm getting some real time. I meant if I'm advising the military, I'm from social science background. I think I may just have to defer to others on this. I'm really not understanding the question.
Maybe what I would say if I understand the question is, there needs to be, understanding of where the technology is. I think there's a lot of excitement behind this quantum technology. And if you're advising some senior person.
Oh, so the question, if you don't have a technical background, how should you be advising national security community? I think that maybe is what the question is. Is that how you're interpreting it, Jamil?
I was interpreting it. I'm not sure how I was interpreting. I was just trying to help you out.
Thank you.
And now we're both. I think, how I'm taking it is, if you don't have this technical background, you're trying to talk about this technology that's incredibly complicated. How can you convey that? What information do you need to know? And I think you do need to kind of look into, you need to balance the excitement with the reality of where the technology is. There's real stuff happening. There's real impactful technology, and trying to identify that versus trying to parse through all the big headlines that were out there, kind of mentioned about the hype, because it can be damaging ultimately if people have an expectation that this technology is going to be, 1 year out, and some of them might be. And then they don't see it, they're going to lose faith in it, and it's going to lose funding.
Yeah, and maybe if I can piggyback off that, and thank you for parsing that out. If the question is fundamentally about how do folks from non-technical backgrounds engage meaningfully in these discussions, right? I do think it is a challenge, and it's something where you need to know where to look for the highest quality technical expertise, right? You need to know who are the voices that carry weight in the field, who are the reliable journals and sources of information. How you aren't going to get sucked up by the hype is, you look to those established, known experts and read what they're writing, right? And you don't need to be able to understand, all the ins and outs of a particular quantum algorithm to understand the meaning of the application that's being explored, or the implications of the advances in a particular algorithm that's being developed. You don't need to actually dig deep into the math that's being done there, so long as you understand this is a person who is well respected within the scientific community. What they are saying has been vetted by a third party that's looked carefully at what they've done, and these are the implications of that work. And you can translate that, I think, without having the scientific understanding at the core there, as long as you have familiarity with the field and can understand big picture where different types of work fits into the discussion. So I would encourage folks who aren't from a STEM field to try to learn as much as you can, just sort of from the kind of high level descriptions of the work that's being done, and look to those experts like the folks here on this call to really help guide your thinking.
Thank you. So a related question to that is the next question. Say, what role should responsible innovation play in the development of these technologies? Does anyone wants to tackle that? This is a bit of a tricky question because, what does a responsible innovation means in this kind of context? I guess it means that the technologies developed are either well contained within the purpose for which they are developed or something of the kind.
Maybe I can say, at least in Europe, we have like 4 centers focusing on quantum and ethic, where a significant part is responsible development, including quantum technologies. And for example, in Dutch ecosystem, which I consider one of the most developed, it's also quite a standard part of your project. That is often you have someone from, let's say, ethical background. but in general, it's not standard yet, and this will have to evolve. On the other side, I see a gap. There is a lot of ethical research, but not the research regarding dual use aspect or impact on international security. There I see much bigger gap actually than ethical questions.
Thank you. So with that, I would like to bring this webinar to its conclusion. Let's wrap it up with some final thoughts. Does anyone has a final thoughts to offer on this topic?
I'd like to share my excitement. This is a really amazing time in quantum science and technology. There is a lot of real world problems we can solve with quantum, and we're hiring at Infleqtion for quantum sensing and computing. Please get your skills up and let's deliver some value with the quantum mechanics.
Yeah, and maybe if I could offer some final thoughts, like obviously quantum has tremendous national security implications, but I think we should resist a potential response, which is just to like close up everything. Like quantum is still a very international field where we need the expertise of each other. And there's still so much basic research that needs to be done. And so I think that we should be mindful of the security implications, but we shouldn't let that slow down our progress and our collaboration.
Anyone else? Well, if no one else has anything to add to that, I would like to thank all of the panelists and all of the participants in this webinar. This was a very nice and very productive discussion. Thank you very much. It's strongly appreciated. Mark your calendars for the upcoming episode in the series. And for the rest of the audience questions, please contact Stephanie or Leo, who can forward your questions to the participants of this panel, and you have them answered directly. So thank you very much again, and hope to see you in the next seminars in the series.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.